Really appreciate it. The timing couldn't be any better. I mean, with the Olympics going on and
Yeah, 'tis the season, huh?
exactly. So I'm just going to give everyone a few minutes there just to log on.
All
Uh,
right.
I had a question for you, Jeff. So when it comes to questions, would you like for everyone to hold off to the very end to ask you questions? Would you like them to send me a message and then we can do it as a form that way? What would you prefer?
That's a good question. How about just folks just chat you questions?
Okay, perfect. And then at the end, I'll read out the questions and we'll get some answers.
That sounds great.
Perfect. Good. So I see we have a couple people here on the call. We're getting pretty full. Wow, a lot of people are joining this evening. That's wonderful. Okay, so just to respect your time, Jeff, it's 9:01 now. So maybe by 9:02, 9:03, we can get going. Does that work for you?
That's great. Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Ouch. So is everyone watching the Olympics? I mean, how can't you right now? It's so addictive.
Yeah, it's good stuff. A lot of history being made.
Oh, I know. The gold medals, and I know in Canada, the women, they're exploding with our medals. It's fantastic.
Good stuff.
A lot of records being broken.
Yeah, as it should be, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was thoroughly enjoying watching the swimming.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay, so everyone, it's 9:02. So we're going to get tonight's call started. We're going to be talking about, we have our guest speaker tonight is Jeff Olson. So Jeff Olson's a former downhill Olympian, skier, sorry about that. And he has 3 daughters. He has been specializing and focusing in human performance for quite some time now. He played in 2 Olympic Games and also won a gold medal in the Pan Am Games. So Jeff is going to speak to us tonight about the importance of nutrition, how Juice Plus is tied into, I guess, his training as a professional athlete. And then from there, we can if you have some questions, please just send a message on the chat. I will read them at the end. And if we don't get to your question this evening, then we will table them for a future date. So take it away, Jeff, and I will mute everyone just to ensure that we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for taking out some Olympic time to come listen to a 20th century athlete. You know, I competed a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but the last 15 years have been involved on the human performance side as it relates to trying to help others, achieve their optimal sort of physical performance, whether you're a weekend warrior, a soccer mom, my grandma, my teenage daughters, the greatest generation or whatever. In the end, whether you're Michael Phelps or you're a 50-year-old middle-aged guy like myself trying to run around and keep up 20, 30-year-olds in old man soccer, or whoever you are, this is a pretty universal message. What makes the body work, what makes it come alive, what makes it do its job, what makes it work when you want it to work is sort of the foundation is human physiology. And we're all more alike than we are different. So sports nutrition is fun, but and that I grew up around sports nutrition. I'm trying to help pull sports nutrition into the 21st century around what I think is a higher sort of conversation around performance, which is I sort of use the term human performance nutrition is a higher form of sports nutrition because what it does is fuel for physiological performance first, and then sports performance second. If your physiology is not working, that's in the critical path of whatever optimal outcome you're trying to get to. So, I did compete and chase snow for a living for a decade. And back in the day, conventional wisdom or sports nutrition, which is really the same conversation that exists today, really for the majority of people who come at this conversation. It was generally centered around 2 things. It was building mass or getting rid of mass, so weight gain or weight loss. And it was about fueling the tank and fueling for the energy. And predominantly sports nutrition tends to focus on that 24-hour period pre and post competition. But that's really not where my conversation lands. I'm happy to speak to that, and there's some pretty simple things that address that. But the other 99.9% of your life is spent getting ready for some sort of competition in the training phase or the living phase. Athletes tend to be ruthlessly practical. They do what works. And once we can educate athletes on some things I'll share with you tonight, they tend to want to lean in and know more, and grounded in sort of the idea that nutrition is only as good as your execution. And if you're not getting it done, then there's some simple tools out there that can perhaps help you get it done. Health food technology tools. And over the last 15 years, I've come to really appreciate what these little itty bitty produce concentrates represent for athletes, and our plant powders represent for athletes. And I use those terms as categories: produce concentrates and plant powders. We can talk about the brand, the global leader in the brand, but if people don't understand what these products are sort of categorically first, a lot of times things get lost in translation. So before we talk about the brand leader, I think it's important to understand what the categories are, but then really talk about why it's important for the human body. So just simplistically, as I said, when I was an athlete, it was around, sort of carbohydrates and proteins and fats, what I call the gasoline side of the conversation, around really doing the first two pillars of what I call human performance nutrition, which is replenishing depleted glycogen, refueling that gasoline tank, replenishing depleted glycogen, which is essentially a carbohydrate, energy, caloric piece of the equation. And the second pillar is rebuilding matter. Matter matters, and rebuilding matter. So that's proteins and amino acids, and we make and discard 300 plus cells a year. And that building cycle, that renewing, replenishing, discarding old cells, rebuilding new cells, whether it's, fascia in your joints or a joint itself or a ligament or a cartilage, or your vessels or your organs, your systems, your brain, your eyes, your heart, your lungs, your muscles, all of those things. What makes that thing come to life is the building blocks of protein. So you got carbohydrates, you got proteins and fats, and those are caloric and energy related macronutrient, right? What's left? Well, it's everything else that has no calories, which I call really the blind spot in sports nutrition. It's the third pillar of what I call human performance nutrition. And at the end, I can send you all a link to a website where I kind of bring this to life online, and people can go back and kind of review what I mentioned. Or maybe what I'll do is I'll just post it up on my Facebook page after this call, and you can go right there and click on it, and you can get it. And so the third pillar, right? So if replenishing depleted glycogen is the first pillar, carbohydrates, and rebuilding matter is the second pillar, food does three things in the human body. It creates, it fuels, which creates energy. It builds, which is, matter, which is you. And then the third pillar, this blind spot, is it conditions. And what it conditions is it conditions physiology. And I'll bring that a little bit to life, but it conditions physiology. So you can train your mind. You can certainly train your body. Athletes train their body. We all exercise and, retrain and reuse, use it or lose it, train your mind, train your body. But the conditioning of physiology happens deep inside us with the food that we eat. And it also occurs when we are asleep. That's why sleep is so important, because, late at night in heavy REM, when we're deep asleep, is the only time that human growth hormone comes out to do its job. And during that time, that's when human growth hormone does its work and interacts with the food that we've just consumed. So if the glycogen and the carbohydrates are replenishing the gasoline tank, and the proteins and the amino acids are reforming and remaking cells and tissues, that other stuff that has no calories, and what that other stuff is vitamins and minerals and enzymes and antioxidants and phytochemicals, which is a word that means plant nutrients, which there's tens of thousands of those things that really provide just-in-time biotechnology, inventory for your body to manipulate, to put together, to have some sort of chemical biochemistry to make things work. And what does it make work? So one of the things that it does, as an example, is help our vascular system, our vessel system, be able to expand and contract. That function, the ability to dilate and vasodilate and constrict. Imagine an athlete wanting, to deliver as much oxygen and as much fuel to the capillaries in their eyes and their brain, all of the tissues in their body. How you do that well is through the vascular system. What turns out the system that makes that perform is a tiny little organelle called the endothelium, which lines our entire vascular system. Well, as it turns out, what makes that thing work are the phytochemicals, the phytonutrients, the tens of thousands of nutrients found, not tens of thousands, but a specific few that make the biochemistry of that thing work. Well, we know that these plant powders, specifically the brand of Juice Plus, impact that endothelium. We have published studies in the Journal of American College of Cardiology that show this vasoactivity, improves vasofunction. So whether you're dealing with capillaries in your eye, trying to get nutrients to your eyes, dealing with macular degeneration, or you're trying to deliver capillary performance to your muscles as an athlete, you want a vessel that can work. And what you want it to dilate like this, with this circumference, or do you want it more like that? That's a performance differential, right? Turns out the conditioning part of that equation, the phytochemical, phytonutrient, all the stuff with no calories makes that thing work. Another thing that it makes work is the mitochondria. Mitochondria is the energy organelle of every cell. We've got 75 trillion cells, and what that little energy pack inside the cell is the mitochondria. It takes ATP and does some biochemistry and brings the thing to life. It's the energy creator. It's where energy is created. And as it turns out, that mitochondria is a very fragile, very complex little organelle sitting within a cell. You want that mitochondria to thrive. You want it to work. You want it to perform. If you look at it and understand how it works, it's very fragile, very complex. Well, as it turns out, where energy gets created, you also get waste product in the form of what are called free radicals or oxidative stress. Think of it as smoke or sparks in the combustion process. That smoke and those sparks, the mitochondria is the first thing to get taken out in sort of this crossfire of free radicals, which are electrons spinning around, kind of smoke or fire, sparks off of a fire. And when they hit cells, when they hit organelles, when they hit things, they damage, they pockmark. And if you have a lot of that, which athletes do because they're combusting a lot, how do you neutralize those sparks of that smoke? Because the mitochondria are the first thing to get taken out in oxidative damage. And when the mitochondria die, if you just think about it, common sense, what happens is lower energy output. So that may not mean a lot to you if you're a civilian, you're not an athlete. I don't need to worry about my mitochondria. Well, as it turns out, as we age, we lose what's called mitochondrial density in the organs that bring us to life. Our brain, our eyes, our heart, our lungs, those high maintenance organs that have high energy requirements, they need a lot of energy output. Mitochondrial density, there's more mitochondria in those cells than in other cells like hair cells and skin cells and nail cells and that sort of thing. So it's important for my grandma, it's important for Michael Phelps. And that density as we age declines. So preserving the density, like athletes work really, really hard to develop mitochondrial density in red muscle tissue. But if they take two steps forward and they don't eat well to protect those human performance gains, they'll take one step back perhaps because they're not recovering well. Or they have so much oxidative stress that they've put a burden on that mitochondria and they've died. So I have some fun graphics and images that I share with people in a lecture that show really cross sections of elite athletes in their muscle tissue. And you see mitochondrial density that's been preserved and protected, how you protect those performance gains. And where athletes have maybe treated nutrition with, frivolity and improvisation and don't take it seriously, and they don't give your body the biochemistry, and that in that oxidative stress, those mitochondria get pockmarked, they get damaged, they die off, and you have less mitochondria in those cells. And what that means, the bottom line, is less energy output. So if I go to a coach or an athlete and I say, hey, are you interested in maximizing and sustaining energy output? That's really the big question. Then I say, hey, I've got something that's worth your attention. It's about preserving your mitochondrial density. What's that? Well, it is your ability to maximize and sustain energy output. So in that preservation process, that antioxidant process, oxidation or oxidative stress can trigger some other thing inside the body. And we know athletes have a higher order of oxidative stress. They're putting higher pressure on their body. Well, as it turns out, what that can trigger inside the body is this chronic sort of systemic inflammatory response, where you're breaking down tissue. And when you break tissue, the way the body heals is it inflames. It provides a protective sort of inflamed area to heal, right? But athletes, a lot of times, especially when they get older, tend to get more inflamed, especially if they're adding a diet that is more acidic, which tends to turn the body into an acidic state, which then precipitates a chronically inflamed posture. And you can't feel it, taste it, touch it, see it. It's tiny. It's incremental. You're incrementally inflamed, but you play that out over a day, might not mean anything. You play that over a day, a week, a month, a year, that turns into a compounding effect, plus or minus. And the compounding effect is really a concept I try to help athletes understand. It's the mastery of fundamentals that make great athletes. You master fundamentals. You master about a half a dozen fundamentals, you'll be the best in the world. And it's these fundamentals of nutrition. If you master the conditioning of your body with great food, i.e. nutrient-dense food, plants food, it's not going to happen overnight. Food does things to the body over time. It's the compounding effect of these tens of thousands of nutrients that have no calories that deliver a compounding effect to your body. So, a year from now, 2 years from now, when it's showtime, you're at the moment of truth, or it's a cancer cell, or it's the capillary in your eye, or it's whatever as we age, you have a cell that can stand and deliver because it has been conditioned to stand and deliver, like your muscles or like your brain. So how does a good cell go bad? How does a good cell stand and deliver versus crash and burn? And that has to do with phytochemicals and phytonutrients and these plant foods. And so what produce concentrates can do, if you're an athlete, you should be consuming double-digit servings of produce every day. I don't know many athletes that do that. One, because you'd have to, you got to be a professional eater to be a professional athlete. And I don't know a lot of athletes that do that. Why? And the why is because it doesn't service their caloric requirement. They need to eat 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 calories a day. Plant foods don't have enough calories to service the fueling gasoline part of the equation, so they end up being low man on the totem pole. That's where these produce concentrates and the plant powders, sort of a health food technology, can come into play for athletes. There's a lot of kinds of food technology out there. You can you can dry, you can freeze, you can irradiate, you can homogenize, you can pasteurize, you can cut and bag a 5-pound bag of kale and buy it at Costco or Walmart. All these kinds of health food technologies. Drying food is an ancient technology, and the company of Juice Plus has figured out how to juice it, dry it, crush it into powders, and the powders of that produce, that's matter that matters. And getting that matter into your body every day has a compounding effect over time that delivers. Where athletes experience an advantage, a competitive advantage with Juice Plus and with these produce concentrates and plants powders, is in recovery. That's the adaptive response. That's, if I can help an athlete recover faster, they can train harder and recover faster, they're going to have a higher adaptive response. They're going to adapt higher, quicker, faster, and stronger. So that's really what I've come to over the last 15 years, come to appreciate. Just a very simple idea. It's a think different idea juxtaposed, to the wall of supplements. It's kind of back to basics, keep it simple, but it's helping athletes or anyone get more of that matter that matters into the body on a daily basis. So I don't know if you've got any questions. I know we're kind of, what time is it? I don't know how much time we have left. 10 minutes, 5 minutes? Do you know?
So we actually have 20 minutes left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if folks want to start throwing out questions via chat, we can kind of collect those. And as they come in, if you just want to, if you see a couple that make sense, you can throw them out there. But in the end, it's pretty simple. Food fuels, food builds, and food conditions. And that's it. And sports nutrition tends to focus on the fueling and the building part. It's the conditioning part, what I call the blind spot in sports nutrition. And human performance nutrition, I believe, fuels for physiology excellence first and sports nutrition second. So that's where these plant powders, produce concentrates, Juice Plus specifically, comes into play. I was introduced to Juice Plus 15 years ago. And as a brand, I can remember it was kind of like back in the 80s when Prince Racket blasted into tennis and they said, bugger that, wood tennis rackets and little tiny head on a tennis, we're not going to do that. We're a design breakthrough. And they had a graphite composite and a large headed tennis racket. And I can remember as a tennis player, it was a game changer and tennis was never the same. Greg LeMond was an American cyclist. He won the Tour de France by 8 seconds one year because he figured out that aerodynamics was important in cycling. And they developed some handlebars where you sit like this, and he had this cool little aerodynamic helmet. In the early 90s, he won the Tour de France. Callaway, the brand, came into golf, and they built this big-headed piece of furniture and stuck a stick on it as a big-headed golf club, right? Swinging a piece of furniture. That big-headed golf club was a design breakthrough. When Juice Plus was introduced, back in the 90s, it was a design breakthrough. And it stands today, 23 years later, as pioneering, this category of produce concentrates. So for athletes, they don't eat enough. It's a simple approach. The nice thing about Juice Plus as a company is they've gone one step further to speak the language of elite athletes. And we've got gold medalists on Juice Plus. We have world champions on Juice Plus. We've got professional hockey players, professional basketball players, professional baseball players, football players, soccer players. But we don't pay them any money. One, because we don't have to. And really, two, that's just not our approach. We don't pay athletes to endorse Juice Plus in a macro sense. Now, what we do is show and speak the language of medicine and science with a body of published, research that, as I like to say, you have a lot of bedtime reading material if you're really into that stuff and you like that stuff. So we have a forest of published science, and we can pull out any tree and dissect it and look at it. We've got a deep and broad body of what's called published efficacy that showed that this stuff gets into the body, it's utilized by the body, and it makes the body do things that are related to health and vitality. It makes it perform. Mm-hmm. So what a doctor might call prevention, I call performance, because it's making the body work. So any questions coming in?
Yeah, actually, we have a call, and it actually comes from a few people. I work with National Defense, the military here in Ottawa, and I had a question for you. So how would you feel that Juice Plus in the increase of fruits and vegetables be beneficial to someone serving in the field in the military?
Well, I guess I would look at a study that was published in the American College of Sports Medicine, and it was a study with elite military.
I think the Australian Navy SEALs, we had one.
Well, it was the Austrian Cobra Special Forces, and it was the equivalent of the Navy SEALs in America. But they all had the same diet, right? So they all were eating the same food in the military. But what was powerful about that study? Dr. Manfred Lamprecht did that study, and he's one of the global leading investigators in the area of oxidative stress as it relates to athletes. So what he did was, these were elite special forces, and it was a 7-month study. And what he was looking at was the damage, the oxidative stress damage to protein. You can oxidize fats. You can oxidize protein. So I make the distinction, there's eating protein, but then there's protecting protein, meaning your tissues and how, and so this study looked at the oxidative damage to proteins in the body. And that's measured by a biomarker called protein carbonose. So long story short is it showed, and how they tested it was they're on a treadmill. and they did over a 7-month period. I think there were 4 test times during that 7 months, and it was 30 minutes before, I think during, 30 minutes after, and maybe a day later. I'm not quite sure if that's the right one, but before, during, after, and they looked at the marker of damage to proteins. Well, as it turns out, these plant powders, Juice Plus, flatlined that damage. Just basically flatlined that damage. And the placebo group, they showed oxidative damage. So to answer your question, military there's a lot of stress. Stress causes oxidative stress. Stress causes stress. Stress causes biochemistry. Stress is cortisol. Cortisol triggers oxidative stress. So if you're in the military and you basically are an elite athlete, I mean, it's kind of plain and simple. And if you want to be on, if you want to perform, if you got up and if you got to go to war, God bless you. But if if you're dealing with military life, you've got to be able to be on every single day. Mental acuity, physical acuity, emotional acuity, intellectual acuity. So you've got to be on. To me, that just means you've got to have biochemistry that's on. So, not knowing, what part of the world you're in and the cafeteria you're getting from, chances are you're probably not eating 10 servings of produce a day. So the nice thing about Juice Plus and the complete shake is they're dried, so they have a shelf life and they travel and transport well. There's 3 things that degrade food: time, heat, and oxygen. And so the capsules have an oxygen barrier. If you're in the desert, you want to consume them quickly. But the fact that they're dried, and packaged in a simple way, they transport very, very well. So we have a lot of people in the military that are using Juice Plus all over the world. Yeah.
Okay, and I had another question, actually. It could be for an elite athlete, or just if we have potentials who have kids who are athletes. Do you recommend that they take double the amount that's recommended for, say, the average person of the Juice Plus capsules?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I tell every athlete to double up. Okay. I mean, that's sort of my standard protocol. As an example, we've got a regimen, sort of a daily regimen that athletes can test drive in what we call our Transform 30. It's just a program. It's a 30-day exercise to really cram more plant matter into your body and see what happens. We ask them to sort of take out dairy and wheat and see how that plays for their performance. But basically, the regimen is to help them develop a habit about using these tools. And so for athletes, and we use that program to help people lean out, and a lot of people lose weight doing that, but they're replacing meals in this program. For athletes, we add it on top of their diet. So it's in addition to their dietary regimen. And what we find with athletes is they're noticing recovery faster. But for athletes, double dose, that's my standard protocol for all athletes. For kids now, for young teenagers, same sort of scenario. The nice thing about Juice Plus, the company, is for 15 years they've provided children Juice Plus capsules, the fruit and the vegetable, for free. So for parents, it's a great deal to get them going on a program. And as we all know, kids struggle like adults to eat enough fruits and vegetables every day. And if you're an athlete, it's even more important than if in the end, what Juice Plus and what the complete shakes are really designed to do is just cram more plant matter into your body. And what that does to you is going to be different from person to person. I didn't experience amazing results after the first month. I got on Juice Plus. I wasn't able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. The earth didn't move for me, but I knew intellectually things were going on inside, deep inside me, what clinicians will call subclinical. It's deep inside. But I knew over time, and I began to experience physical things after about a year and a half of being on Juice Plus. And where my athletic friends really experience it is in recovery. So
Okay. When you're talking about recovery, because I know a lot of the times we talk about everyone wants to do a protein shake after they do a workout or a major sporting event or anything like that. Now, with our protein, do you suggest, again, you suggest with the capsules that they double up, an athlete double up. Should they also double up in the scoops of the protein?
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, just two scoops. Two scoops if
two
for
scoops?
For an
Okay.
athlete, yeah, it's two scoops.
Okay.
Because here's why. And then, I'm glad you brought that up. It's pretty important. A lot of athletes will take our complete powders and they'll do kind of a caloric protein carb sort of comparison.
Okay.
To
Yeah.
whatever shake they're taking. And we have less carbs and less proteins. Why? Because plants have less carbs and less proteins. But what we have that most all other products don't have is the tens of thousands of phytonutrients, the conditioning, the no-calorie stuff that actually does something in the body. So I'm asking athletes to look behind the carbs and proteins for that third pillar, the conditioning, and that comes from the plant foods. And so to up the calories, so what you get is you get great gasoline, but I call the oil part of the equation is all the other stuff with no calories. And a good car needs gas and oil. And if the gas is caloric, the oil is non-caloric. And so to have great gas and great oil, you just double up on the complete and you get both. If you double up on other products that just have high carbs and proteins, you're just going to get more carbs and more proteins, and you're not going to get any of the phytonutrients and phytochemicals. So thank you for mentioning that, because it's really important, because people do this comparison and they say, well, there's less here. You just double up and you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. So do you suggest, okay, so if someone's a professional athlete, they're doing their training, do you suggest, like, I take my capsules, I put everything into my smoothie every morning. So I do everything all at once. That's just the way I work. Now, for a professional athlete, do you suggest they stagger it throughout the day? Should they have, depending on what they're, within an hour of working out, within an hour before, is there something that you find that works best?
Well, the most important thing is that you do it every day. So if your teeth or the blender or coffee is the only way, I got one athlete, he just takes it all with his coffee. That's the only way you can do it. So that's great. But the most important thing is to do it. Are there optimal ways to consume anything? Of course, we don't eat all our food in one setting. So it's food. So, sort of the spread out. So, certainly with the shakes, pre and post workout, that just follows sort of your normal shake routine. I use it, pre-workout, I use it post-workout, pretty straightforward. The capsules, as just as a crude way to think about the capsules, we got the fruit capsules, the vegetable capsules, and the berry capsules. Okay. We know the fruit capsules and the fruit in those capsules have an anti-inflammatory benefit. So I tend to consume the fruit midday. The vegetables we know have immune system strength, and I take those in the morning. I take my vegetables in the morning, I take my fruit midday, and I take my berries. Oh, excuse me, that's incorrect. I take my berries in the middle of the day. My vineyard in the middle of the day, because we know berries improve circulation. Sometimes I will take all of it at once if I'm traveling and I just don't want to forget. But my normal day is veggies in the morning, berries midday, and then fruit at night. That works for me. My wife is almost the exact opposite. So whether or not it makes a real difference, I'm not sure. I think the more important thing is you do it. And why my little brain says, well, I get up, I take my veggies, my immune system, I'm going to be active during the day. I want better circulation. I take my vineyard. And then at night, after I've maybe had my day, I want an anti-inflammatory effect when I go to bed, and I take my fruit. Is there any science around that? There's science in the research, but that's just a crude way that I've developed a habit. And that's the most important thing, is developing the habit. So.
Okay, that's a great tip, actually, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people on the call tonight. We do have 4 minutes remaining. Are there any final questions for Jeff? Again, if you come up with a question maybe at a later time, feel free to post them on the Team B Facebook page, and Nicole Scott, the real Nicole Scott, can post the question back over to Jeff. Does anyone have anything else?
And what I'll do is I've got a website that kind of talks and speaks to some of this, and I'll post that up on my Facebook page here after the call. So.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I guess what we'll do, thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time out of your day and your evening just to talk to us. This, for myself, has been extremely beneficial. I know a lot of people are going to benefit from the information that you've shared with us and just your passion and 15 years of being an athlete and doing all this. So it's really going to be beneficial for all of us. I thank you very much on behalf of Team B. Sorry about that. My little dog started barking. Someone's at the door.
Well, thank you very much. I'll leave you with this thought. Look, I'm 50 years old, and I used to think of myself as a Porsche. Now I think of my body as a Porsche. Now I just think of my body as a truck, and I want to get up and work every day like a truck, and I want to be dependable. And what conditioning your body with great food will do is give you durability. And I don't care if you're an elite athlete or you're a 50-year-old, durability in the end is what's going to take you through that 99% of your life to get to that 1% of your life that is a performance moment. And durability is about eating great food. And this is where these health food and health food technology of Juice Plus and Complete come into play. So thank everyone for tuning in, and I'll post that stuff up on Facebook. And thanks for your time, everyone. Go watch the Olympics.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. Have a great evening, everyone.